I want to welcome you all back to yet another Bible study. Today we'll be looking at the subject of the Antichrist. We're going to be taking a deep doctrinal dive because there are many misinformation, disinformation, and many speculation as to who the Antichrist is, whether he's a past historical figure dead, or he's present, or he's yet to come. So today we'll be looking at the subject, the truth about the Antichrist. Is the identity a secret? And this is part one. And it is a historical and biblical exposition that defines the Antichrist. So this will dispel all speculation, all heretical belief and dilution of the truth as taught in Scripture, in the prophetic books of Daniel, Revelation, and certain epistles written by Paul as to the Antichrist and his nature. I will not be able to cover everything in this study, but this is just merely to whet your appetite and an introduction to the subject. So please leave your comment as to who you think the Antichrist is. Some think he's Antiochus Epiphanes, some think he's Nero, others think that he's a president of the United States past or even the future one. Some think that he's a figure that is yet to come, a mysterious figure that is yet to come on the world stage and to do the blasphemous things that are written in scripture concerning this figure. Yet still some think it's Ronald Reagan, or they even go as far as to say it's Ellen White. But neither Ronald Reagan nor the President of the United States, Antiochus Epiphanes, or Nero, did the things that the Bible prophesied that the Antichrist would come. One, they did not change times and laws. They did not blaspheme God. They did not sit in the temple of God showing themselves to be God. And all the other blasphemous and ungodly things spoken of the Antichrist. So let's dive deep. In Daniel chapter 7, verse 2 and 3, verses 2 and 3, Daniel chapter 7 is the book which speaks of the beast and speak of the Antichrist. It says, Daniel spake and said, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the four winds of the heaven strove upon the great sea. So now you're dealing with prophetic symbols and descriptions here that one would have to study the scriptures, put precept upon precept, line upon line. Take here a little, there a little, as Isaiah and the Apostle Paul says we should treat prophecy. He says, and four great beasts came up from the sea, diverse one from another. So they were different. The beasts, these creatures that he saw, were different four-legged beasts in his vision. That's Daniel chapter 7, verses 2 and 3. Now in verse 17 he says, these great beasts which are four kings which shall arise out of the earth. So now we're dealing with symbolism here. He said that he saw the four winds of the heavens strove upon the great sea. So what does wind and sea in prophetic scripture, prophetic language means? And I'm going to help you to understand. The sea typifies the nations of the world, according to Revelation chapter 17 and verse 15. The winds represent war, strife, and bloodshed, Jeremiah chapter 25 verses 32 and 33. And the four beasts represent the four successive world powers, Babylon, Media-Persia, Greece, and Rome, which were to bear rule over the earth. And if we should study the historical annals, we will see that according to the prophecy of Daniel chapter 7, which was fulfilled, we saw that we had Babylon who ruled the world, Media-Persia, then Greece, and then Rome. And since that, no other world ruling power. Don't tell me about the United States ruling the world. That will never happen. Rome still rules the world covertly. Now, let's get deeper into Daniel chapter 7. In verse 7 of Daniel chapter 7, it says, after this I saw in the night vision, and behold, a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible, and strong exceedingly, and it had great iron teeth. It devoured and brake in pieces, and stamped the residue with the feet of it, and it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. So now Daniel is telling you what he saw in his night visions. He saw the four beasts, as I've read in verses 2 and 3. But now he's explaining the fourth beast. And he's telling you that this fourth beast was different from the other three. It was different from Babylon. It was different from Medo-Persia. It was different from Greece. But what you also need to know that this fourth beast had characteristics of the other three beasts that were before it, but it was still different from those other three beasts, those three other kingdoms, because the beasts represent kingdoms. The kings are the kingdoms. And the Bible said it had 10 horns. That's verse 7 of Daniel chapter 3. Now, in verse 24, Daniel also wrote that and the 10 horns, as I've made mention in verse 7, out of this kingdom are 10 kings that shall arise. So out of this fourth kingdom will arise 10 different kings. So what is happening is telling you that this kingdom is going to be fragmented, be divided into 10 different kingdoms. And what we are about to see, to witness from the prophecy, is that these 10 kings, out of those will arise the Antichrist. Let's move forward. In Daniel chapter 7 and verse 8, Daniel said, I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn, before whom there were three of the first horns plucked up by the roots. And behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and mouth speaking great things. We need to understand that Rome, which was the fourth world ruling power, which Daniel described as being diverse from the other three, and it tells you that it was exceedingly terrible. It told you that this kingdom would have been divided into 10 other kingdoms, of which you would have 10 kings. 10 horns representing 10 kingdoms out of this kingdom. No, what happened is that the another little horn, as described in verse 8 here, which uprooted three of those kings, is the one here that Daniel is helping us to understand, that it had eyes like the eyes of a man and mouth speaking great things. So Daniel is describing what would have happened with this new kingdom, because it says the horn represent the king. So this little horn, speaking great things, having eyes like a man and mouth speaking great things, is the representative of one who assumed the role of king, or one who is made to be a king, the ruler of this kingdom, which took the place of the three horns that it plucked up by the roots. Now in verse 24, he said, and the 10 horns out of this kingdom are 10 kings that shall arise, and another shall rise after them, and he shall be diverse from the first. So what is uh, Daniel explaining to us is that there is going to be a king before this little horn. But when this little horn emerges, he's going to be different from the one that was before him. He said he shall be diverse from the first, different. And we're going to see in what way he will be different. No, Waldo Emerson in Antichrist and Mass in the book The Bible Speaks, page 543, wrote, this new power was to rise within the Roman Empire, subsequent to its division, but it was to form no part of any of the divisions. It was to have a separate existence as well as to be diverse in nature from the others. Did such a power rise? It surely did. The Roman Catholic Church took its name from the empire. It established its capital in the ancient capital. It adopted the Roman tongue, and the title of its spiritual director, Pontifex Maximus, was borrowed from that of the Roman emperors. But unlike the powers by which it was surrounded, its claim to supremacy was based not upon force of arms, but upon the pretension of divine ordination. Quote, Roman imperialism still survives, the most imposing of all the political anachronism in the palace of the Pontifex Maximus in the Vatican. When we speak of anachronism, we're speaking of something that is out of line. It's an error in chronology, especially a chronological misplacing of persons, events, objects, or customs in regard to each other. So, the Pope taking the title of Pontifex Maximus within the time that they rose to power, it was outdated, or according to the definition, it did not fit the chronology of Roman emperors because Roman emperors were outdated. There were no more Nero, no more Caesars, there were no more Herods. And so the Pope, being religious, leader of the church, assuming the title of former emperor, was not chronological. There was an error here in its chronology. And it also, the Merriam-Webster dictionary gives the other meaning of anachronism. It's a person or a thing that is chronologically out of place. One from a far, especially one from a former age that is incongruous in the present. So in the present, took the form of its spiritual director, Pontifex Maximus, and it was, as it stated, out of place. It was one from a former age that is incongruous to the present, belonged to the time of the Caesars and the Roman emperors. No, the Pope wasn't an emperor, but he took on that title. And then he claimed that his ordination was divine, it is from God. And so we see here what is going on. There is a play. It adopted Roman tongue so that no one could understand when they speak, or unless you're a part of them and within the Roman Catholic hierarchy, the Vatican and the church. Now, watch this. Verse 20 of of Daniel chapter 7 says, and of the 10 horns that were in his head, and of the other which came upon before whom 3 fell, even of that horn that had eyes, and a mouth that spake very great things, whose look was more stout than his fellows. Now, you see that at first being small and weak compared with the 10 kingdoms, Rome quickly assumed a place among the nations. According to A.G. Wells in Outline of History, Volume 1, page 605, he says, quote, its rise could not have been better described. From being merely one of the outposts of early Christianity, so exalted did the little horn become, that the greatest of earthly kings have stood to kiss the toe of its supreme pontiff. In a few centuries the Pope had become in theory, and to a certain extent in practice, the high priest, censor, judge, and divine monarch of Christendom. H.G. Wells, Outline of History, Volume 1, page 605. I'm giving you credible historical proof. I'm looking at this, as I told you, from a historical background. So don't believe that I'm just speaking off the top of my head. I am going to furnish you with relevant historical data to back up what I'm saying. There are those who will tell you Antiochus is the Antichrist. Others will say Nero. I've watched many popular YouTube spokesperson on religious matters. Don't know who taught them, don't know where they got the teaching from. Because the Bible tells me that when for the time you are to be teachers, you first need to be taught by others, which is the first principle of the oracles of God. And you are in need of milk and not strong meat, for you are a babe, because strong meat belongs to those who are of age, or those who have had their senses, spiritual senses now, exercised to discern between good and evil. Paul writing to the Galatians. So now we have some people who are running, God have not sent them. We have some people who are prophesying, and they are prophesying lies and heresies. Now, prophecy is history foretold, and we can go into the historical annals to see that these prophecies have been fulfilled. Now, question I would like to ask you, is the papacy, is not the papacy, is the papacy the Antichrist? Is Nero the Antichrist? Is Ronald Reagan the Antichrist? Is Ellen White the Antichrist? Is Antiochus Epiphanes the Antichrist? Is the Antichrist an American president, former or present? Is the Antichrist some mysterious or mystical figure that will appear in the future? Please leave your comment and let us discuss this subject and ask any question you have concerning this subject, and I will answer it. God bless you until you see me again, hear me again on this subject of part 2 of Antichrist. So I hope and trust that you will be blessed. Have a good and godly day. So as we look at this subject, truth about the Antichrist, is the Antichrist secret, part 1. We look forward to part 2. Hope that you've been blessed. Let me know. Leave your comment, share, like, and subscribe. Have a good day and ciao.